Hey guys, Paint and Skill here, and today's video is all about how to paint bone. I've had several people ask me to do a step-by-step process video on how I personally paint bone, and so that is what today is all about. I'm going to be using my Auric Megaboss as the example piece because it's got a nice large skull on his shoulder and it's perfect for this tutorial. And so let's get started. Okay, so the first step that I actually did before I even got to painting was when I built it, there was this really nasty gap, and so there's a nasty gap here a little bit, so I'll probably go back in and fix that too. But first thing I actually did was fill that in with liquid green stuff. I had a lot of people talk about how the original green stuff would have been better, but I had no problem with this. So basically what I did was I just popped this open, and then I took my paintbrush, I scooped it up, and I just kind of dabbed it in there. And then I took my finger and smoothed it out. I also used my brush wet to kind of smooth it out and get rid of all the big chunks of it. This is about 4 layers, so you have to wait about a half hour in between each layer for it to dry. It's not perfect, but I think it's a good go for a first time using liquid green stuff from Citadel. So that was the first step. So once I got done with the liquid green stuff and everything dried, my first coat, the base coat, will be done in Zandri dust. Okay, so that's two coats of Zandri dust for the base. I'm going to go in and do some touch-up detail. You can obviously tell that you can still see that ridge line, the connection line, but oh well, what are you going to do? I'm going to try and mask it when I paint it, but... Okay, so after the Zandri dust, 2 coats of that, and that's dried, we're going to use Agrax Earthshade. Now this layer is going to be not super thin, but not like glopped on everywhere. So this is what the Agrax Earthshade looks like. So the next step, we're going to do a shading of Raikland Flesh shade. This is probably my favorite shade color, especially for bone, because it'll add a nice red warm tone. And as you build up, it'll carry through the layers, and it just adds a little extra pop to it. Okay, so this is what the bone looks like after the Raikland Flesh shade. I think it's looking really good. You can tell that there's a nice red-brown undertone there. As you'll recall, I had a little bit of issue with the liquid green stuff, and there was a nice big old dent that you could still see. You can kind of still see right here, but not too much. So what I did to remedy that was basically do kind of like illusion work with my painting. So originally there were two little ridges that you could see. And so what I did with my Agrax and Raikland shade was I just made sure that the right hand ridge was unpainted, so it made it like pop and a severe highlight, and so it tricks the eye into only seeing one. Obviously this line will not be here the whole time. I'm going to kind of cover it up with my shades coming, or my layers coming up, and then obviously when I highlight, that'll kind of disappear as well. But for right now, it helps hide that. So basically, I just didn't paint that right top ridge in order to make it kind of like a highlight. But you can see, if you look really close, you can see that left one right there. And it kind of goes all the way down to the front. So this next part, after the Raikland, you what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a super thin layer of Ushabti Bone. And obviously with layers you don't want to go into all of the shadow, like where shadows are going to be. So you just kind of, and as you can tell, I'm already kind of covering up that fake highlight ridge that I added in there. Again, this is extremely thin, so thinner than what I would have for just like a normal layer. We just kind of want to get a ghost image almost. Okay, so this is 2 thin layers of Ushabti Bone, and as a reference, I thought I'd bring in what I am basing this off of. So this is my 5th Auric Brute that I did a while ago, and I really liked how I did my bone. So I'm basing my Mega Boss's process off of my Auric Brute's recipe that I made. So this will eventually look like this, kind of. Obviously in its own way, though. So the next thing we need to do is a shade of Seraphim Sepia. So next up is Seraphim Sepia. Okay, so this is what it looks like after the coat of Seraphim Sepia. Now the next portion is another super thin layer of Ushabti Bone, followed by Sepia again, and then one more layer of very thin Ushabti Bone. And for the last little bit of the bone, we're going to use Pallid Witch Flesh as a super highlight, or as the highlight. So we want to thin down our paints, per usual. I'm probably going to thin it down even more. And then we're just going to go at the very, very highlights. I don't want these to be extremely noticeable, just super subtle. And after this, I may go over it with Ushabti just to tone it down even a little bit more. Gonna take some Ushabti Bone just to blend out the edges a little bit. Tone it down just a bit. So even when I have a recipe, a lot of it, at least at the end, there's a lot of improv, because what works on a tiny jawbone doesn't necessarily work on a large skull like this. So while I've showed you my recipe for bone, I also have to be flexible with it. So I'm just going in with Ushabti Bone and going over the highlights to even it out. And I may even do a final layer of sepia to really, what's the word? Pull everything together. Alrighty, so now that I have that extra layer of Ushabti on top of the Pallid Flesh super highlight, ooh, that's a mouthful, I'm going to let it sit and dry, and then I may do one last extremely thin layer of Seraphim Sepia. We'll see how it turns out. Okay, so after the Ushabti Bone, I did in fact go in with one more layer of Seraphim Sepia, and then I just did a couple of touch-ups on highlights, just to even things out, and then I also went back on the teeth with a thin layer of Screaming Skull, and then went over that with Seraphim Sepia to tone it down a little bit and make it match the skull's warmth even more. So that is the skull. It is done and complete. I'm really happy with it, actually. Obviously I'll go in and do the twine and do all the touch-ups around it, because I got some of the brown on the shoulder pad. Whoops, but shit happens. So yeah, that is how I paint bone. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this tutorial was helpful for you. In the comments below, please let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, what worked, what didn't work. I am brand new to YouTube, so I need all the help I can get. Just leave some constructive criticism, and don't be a dick. That's all I ask. So if you like what you saw, please subscribe to my YouTube channel here, as well as follow me on Instagram and Twitter. My handles for all social media is painting to scale to make it super easy for you guys to find me. On that note, I'll see you in the next video.